This is a story about a haunting at a hospice nursing home. Before we start, please hit like and subscribe for more stories like this. By the time Christina Morales and Isabella Ruiz pulled into the back lot of St. Gabriel's Hospice Nursing Center, most of Connecticut had already gone quiet. It was a low brick building at the edge of a small town outside New Haven, close enough to the highway that you could hear trucks in the distance, but far enough from everything that, after midnight, the place fell forgotten. The maples behind the center leaned over the service road, their black branches tapping the roof whenever the wind came off Long Island Sound and pushed inland with that damp, bitter cold. Christina was 44, practical, broad-shouldered, and tired in the way only a woman who had worked nights for years could be tired. Isabella was 38, smaller, quicker, and more sensitive to things she did not always know how to explain. They had cleaned offices, schools, clinics, and funeral homes together for almost 10 years, and by then, they could talk without talking. Christina would raise one eyebrow, and Isabella would know she meant do the bathrooms first. Isabella would point her chin toward hallway, and Christina would know somebody spilled something again. They were not girls who scared easily. They had heard old pipes knocking behind walls. They had seen reflections in dark windows and laughed about it later. They had cleaned exam rooms where people had died hours before, and they had learned that death, most nights, was not loud. It was quiet, it was heavy, and it left behind a kind of stillness that made even a rolling mop bucket sound disrespectful. See, Gabriel's was different. Hospice patients lived there when families could not care for them at home, or when pain had become too difficult to manage anywhere else. Some were old and ready. Some were younger and angry. Some had family members who filled a room with flowers and framed photographs, and some had no one, except nurses, volunteers, and the graveyard cleaning crew who moved through the halls after visiting hours were over. Christina always said hospice spirits, if spirits existed at all, were probably the kindest ones. "They are tired, Mija," she told Isabella one night as they restocked paper towels near the nurse's station. "Most of them are not trying to scare anybody. They just want peace." Isabella nodded, but her eyes drifted down the east hallway, toward the last room on the left. Room 214, the corner room. Every nursing center has a room the staff talks about in low voices. St. Gabriel's, it was not because of blood on the walls, or some terrible crime, or a rumor about a patient who screamed until dawn. It was worse because it was plain. A clean room, a warm room, a room with a single window, a beige recliner, a rolling tray, an oxygen hookup, and a little wooden cross someone had hung near the door years before. And still, every patient assigned to room 214 seemed to go first. Not always the same night, not always suddenly, but enough times that the nurses noticed. Enough times that the aides stopped joking about it. Enough times that Christina, who did not like superstition, would finish that room quickly and keep the door open while she worked. On their first winter, St. Gabriel's, Isabella had heard singing from inside that room after it was empty. On their third year, Christina found the mattress pressed down in the shape of a person, even though housekeeping had stripped it bare an hour earlier. On their seventh year, a patient in a room across the hall whispered to Isabella, "The lady in the corner keeps asking if my daughter is coming." Isabella told herself old people dreamed out loud. Christina told herself nurses forgot things. That was how they survived night work. You explained everything before it had a chance to become something else. But on the last week of October, a little after 1 in the morning, Isabella saw a shadow run out of room 214. It did not walk. It did not drift. It came low and fast, like a person bent forward on all fours, except there was no sound of hands or feet against the floor. It crossed the hallway in a black smear, slipped past the med cart, and vanished into the laundry alcove. Isabella froze with one hand on the mop handle. Christina, who was wiping fingerprints from the glass doors near the courtyard, looked over and said, "What?" Isabella swallowed. Nothing. But the mop water in her bucket had gone still, too still, as if the whole building was holding its breath with her. The next night, Isabella saw the shadow again. This time, it came from the nurse's station side of the hallway, crossed in front of the chapel door, and ran straight into room 214. The room was empty. Isabella knew it was empty because she and Christina had cleaned it themselves after the last patient passed that morning, a 91-year-old man named Mr. Haskell, who had thanked every nurse by name before he closed his eyes. Christina was in the supply closet, counting trash liners, when Isabella whispered, "Did you see that?" "See what?" Christina said, not even turning around. That thing, the shadow, it went into the corner room. Christina stepped out slowly, holding the box against her hip. I say no. Do not start. I'm not starting. I saw it. You saw a cart reflection, or a nurse, or your own imagination after too much coffee. Isabella wanted to argue, but then the call light above room 214 clicked on. Both women stared at it. The little red bulb glowed over the door, steady and bright. Christina's voice dropped. That room is empty. From somewhere inside, a woman began to cry. It was not a dramatic cry. It was not a movie scream. It was the kind of crying people try to hide when they are too tired to keep hiding it, wet, breathless, and broken into small sounds that made the hallway feel indecent. Isabella took one step toward the door, then another. Christina caught her sleeve. We get the nurse. She sounds alone. The room is empty. I know what I hear. Isabella pushed the door open before Christina could stop her. Room 214 was dark except for the night light near the bathroom and the thin strip of hallway glow behind them. The bed was made. The recliner was pushed neatly into the corner. The oxygen hookup hung against the wall. The window reflected the two cleaning women standing in the doorway. And in the recliner, a young woman sat hunched forward with her face in her hands. She looked about 30, maybe 32. Her hair was dark and tangled around her cheeks, and she wore a faded blue hospital gown with one shoulder slipping loose. Her bare feet did not touch the floor. She cried as if her whole body was emptying itself. Isabella took a careful breath. Miss, are you okay? The woman did not answer. Christina looked from the recliner to Isabella, then back to the recliner, but her face changed in a way Isabella would remember for the rest of her life. Christina was not looking at the woman. She was looking through her. Isabella, Christina said very softly, who are you talking to? Isabella pointed. Her? The lady in the chair. There is nobody in the chair. The crying grew louder. Isabella felt cold crawl across her arms. Can you tell me your name? The woman lowered her hands just enough for Isabella to see her mouth trembling. Gina, she whispered. Christina stepped back into the hallway. No. We are done. We are getting Denise. But Isabella could not move. The woman in the chair stared at her now, eyes shining, face gray with sorrow. Tell them, Gina said. Tell who? Isabella asked. Gina's lips shook. Tell my family I'm still here. Isabella's voice came out thin. Where are they? Gina looked toward the window, toward the black courtyard where dead leaves scraped across the concrete. They said they were coming, she whispered. They always said tomorrow. Then the room light flickered once, and when it came back, the recliner was empty. The crying stopped, but only for a moment. Because from under the made bed, close to the wall where no person could fit, something exhaled Isabella's name. Lead nurse Denise Walker did not laugh when Christina dragged Isabella to the station. That was the first thing that frightened Christina more than anything else. Denise was a woman who had worked hospice for 22 years, and she had the calm face of someone who had seen every kind of grief a family could bring into a building. She had seen daughters faint, sons argue over paperwork, husbands sleep in chairs for weeks, and strangers show up at the last hour asking forgiveness from someone who could no longer answer. When Isabella told her there was a woman crying in room 214, Denise simply put down her pen. What did she say her name was? Denise asked. Gina. The nurse's face tightened. Christina noticed it immediately. You know that name. Denise looked toward the east hallway, and for a few seconds, the only sound was the soft mechanical sigh of the ice machine in the family lounge. There was a Gina, she said. 5 years ago. Isabella sat down slowly. Denise lowered her voice, even though the nearest patient room was 2 doors away. Gina Alvarez, 31, ovarian cancer. She was transferred here for comfort care near the end. She stayed in 214. Christina crossed herself before she could stop herself. Denise continued, she had family in Bridgeport, I think maybe an older sister, maybe an aunt, but they did not come much. There were phone calls, promises, excuses. Gina kept asking if they were on the way. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. She told me they said tomorrow. Denise looked away. That was enough. In hospice, tomorrow was the cruelest word anyone could give a dying person. Christina wanted to leave right then. She wanted to hand Denise the keys, walk out to the parking lot, and never come back after dark. But night work paid better, her mother's medicine was expensive, and Isabella's husband had been laid off 2 months earlier. Fear was a luxury for people who had savings. So they finished the shift. They tried anyway. At 2:16 in the morning, every light in the east hallway went out at once. The rest of the building stayed bright. The nurse's station, the chapel, the lobby, all of it remained lit in that soft yellow overnight glow. But the east hallway dropped into blackness so complete it looked painted over. Christina found the breaker panel. Nothing had tripped. Denise checked the emergency lights. They should have come on, but they did not. Then a call bell rang from room 214. 1 ring. A pause. 3 rings. A pause. 1 ring. Denise whispered, "That is not how the call system works." Isabella heard crying again, but this time it was farther away, like it came from the walls instead of the room. Gina's voice moved through the darkness. "Isabella." Christina grabbed her hand. "Do not answer." The voice came again, closer now. "Isabella, please." A black shape crossed the hallway at the far end. It was taller this time, stretched thin from floor to ceiling, and it moved wrong, bending around the door frames as if it had no bones. It slipped into room 214, and the temperature dropped so hard that Christina saw her own breath. Denise ran to the thermostat panel near the medication room. "It says 71, she whispered. Room 214's door swung open by itself. Cold rolled out, white and visible like freezer smoke. Frost spread along the metal door handle. The little window beside the room clouded from the inside. Isabella stepped close enough to see the digital thermometer Denise kept for patient rooms. It flashed -20. Christina pulled her back. No room in Connecticut gets that cold inside, not with the heat on, not ever. From inside the frozen room, Gina whispered, "It won't let me leave." And then another voice spoke beneath hers, deep, dry, and almost amused. "She waited too long. After that night, St. Gabriel's changed. Not in a way the day shift could understand at first. In the morning, the center looked normal. Coffee brewed in the break room. Volunteers arranged magazines in the family lounge. Sunlight came through the lobby windows and made the polished floors shine. Families signed in, nurses smiled softly, and the building pretended to be what it had always been, a place where the dying were kept comfortable and the living were taught how to let go. But after sunset, the halls belonged to something else. Light bulbs popped in the east wing, one by one, always starting closest to room 214. The bathroom mirrors fogged with no steam in the air. Wet footprints appeared outside the chapel, small and bare, as if a woman had walked there from a shower, then disappeared before reaching the door. Christina found the same folded blanket on the bed in 214 3 times in one shift, even after she threw it into the laundry cart and watched an aide wheel it away. Isabella heard Gina everywhere. Sometimes the crying came through the vents. Sometimes it followed her mop bucket, stopping when Christina got close. Once, while Isabella was wiping the handrail near the nurse's station, the mounted television clicked on by itself and showed nothing but blue screen static. Through the static, a woman whispered, "Call Sophia." Isabella backed away. "Who is Sophia?" The screen flickered. A pale reflection appeared behind Isabella, not on the television, but inside it, as if the dark glass had become a window into room 214. Gina stood there, one hand pressed to the inside of the screen. "Tell my sister," Gina said. "Tell her I waited." Christina walked in at that exact second, saw Isabella staring at the television, and snapped, "No, you do not talk to it anymore. You hear me? You are not a nurse, not a priest, not a medium. You clean. You clock out. You go home." Isabella turned with tears in her eyes. What if nobody ever came for her? Christina's anger cracked, and underneath it was fear. And what if something else came instead? That question stayed in the air. The shadow did not act like Gina. Gina cried. Gina begged. Gina repeated names and promises, and the word tomorrow until it sounded like a wound. The shadow watched. It crossed the hall whenever someone was alone. It waited outside rooms where patients were close to death. It ran into 214 as if that room was not a room at all, but a mouth. One patient, Mrs. Bellamy, told Denise she saw a tall man standing at the foot of her bed, though she could not see his face. He asked me if I was ready, Mrs. Bellamy said. Denise took her hand. And what did you say? The old woman smiled sadly. I said yes, honey, but he got angry. I think he wanted me to say no. By the end of the week, even Christina could not pretend anymore. At 3:07 on Friday morning, while she was alone in the clean linen room, every shelf began to shake. Towels slid out in white heaps. Pillowcases unfolded in the air and dropped around her feet. The door slammed shut, and the little window filled with darkness from the outside. Christina hammered the door with both fists. Isabella. From behind the linen carts, Gina's voice whispered, "She can see me." Christina pressed her back against the door. Then talk to her, not me. The darkness at the window thickened, and the deeper voice answered from the other side. She invited us. Christina stopped breathing. The door opened suddenly, and Isabella stood there with Denise behind her, both of them pale. Christina came out shaking. She looked at Isabella and said the words she had been too stubborn to say. "We need help." The next morning, Denise called the administrator. The administrator called maintenance, then an electrician, then the regional director, and when every normal explanation failed, Denise made one final call. She called Father Miguel from St. Agnes Parish. He arrived before sundown with a small black case, a silver cross, holy water, and the face of a man who had learned not to mock what frightened people. Father Miguel asked for the names first. Not the maintenance reports. Not the temperature readings. Not the camera footage of hallway lights blinking in a sequence no electrical fault should understand. He wanted names because, he said, every place of suffering collects voices, and every voice deserves to be called what was called in life. Denise gave him the names of patients who had died in room 214. Christina expected one or two. Denise read from an old binder until the list filled half a page. When she reached Gina Alvarez, Isabella began to cry. Father Miguel looked at her with kindness, but not surprise. "She spoke to you." Isabella nodded. "She wants her family." The priest closed his eyes for a moment. Sometimes the dead do not remain because they are evil. Sometimes they remain because the living taught them to wait. Christina stood beside Isabella, arms folded tight across her chest. In the shadow, Father Miguel's expression changed. That may not be Gina. They began in the chapel. Denise, two aides, Christina, Isabella, and Father Miguel stood under the small stained glass window while the rest of the night staff kept patients calm. The priest prayed in English first, then Spanish, his voice low and steady. He asked for mercy on the lonely, mercy on the forgotten, mercy on those who died listening for footsteps that never came. When he said Gina's name, the lights in the chapel dimmed. A woman sobbed from the east hallway. Isabella whispered, "She's scared." Father Miguel dipped his thumb in holy water and touched the doorframe. "Then we go to her." The walk to room 214 felt longer than it should have. The hallway stretched in a way that made Christina dizzy. The same exit sign appeared twice. A medcart they had already passed stood ahead of them again. From behind closed patient doors came soft voices, not the voices of the living patients inside, but older voices, thinner voices, voices saying names that had not been on the staff board for years. At room 214, frost had sealed the window. Father Miguel placed his hand on the door. Inside, Gina cried, "Do not open it." The deeper voice answered, "Open." The door unlocked by itself. The room was white with cold. The bed sheets were stiff. The recliner sat in the corner, rocking gently, though no one touched it. Isabella saw Gina beside the window, barefoot, shivering, her hands folded under her chin like a child begging not to be punished. "I told them," Isabella said, her voice breaking. "I told them you were here." Gina looked at her. "Did Sophia come?" Isabella did not know how to answer. Father Miguel stepped forward. "Gina Alvarez, daughter of God, you are not abandoned. You are remembered here, and you are allowed to go in peace." The shadow came out from under the bed. Christina saw it then. For the first time, she truly saw it, not as a blur, not as a trick of light, but as a tall, bent shape with long arms and a face that was only in absence where a face should be. It unfolded slowly, scraping the ceiling without making a sound. Every machine in the room screamed at once. Father Miguel raised the cross. "You do not belong to her." The shadow bent toward him. The priest's voice grew louder, not theatrical, not angry, but firm enough that Isabella felt it in her ribs. He He prayed for the dead who were afraid, for the living who had failed them, and for whatever had fed on that failure to be cast out of the room and out of the house. Gina reached toward Isabella. Isabella wanted to take her hand, but Christina held her back and whispered, "Let him finish." The room shook. The window cracked in a clean line from top to bottom. The recliner slammed backward against the wall. Then the hallway outside filled with footsteps, dozens of them, slow and shuffling, moving toward the chapel. Gina looked past Isabella, and for the first time, her face softened. "They came," she whispered. Maybe she saw her family. Maybe she saw nurses who had held her hand. Maybe she saw all the lonely dead walking toward the light Father Miguel kept calling them into. Isabella never knew. But Gina smiled, and the cold began to lift. The shadow folded inward like burned paper, shrinking into the corner of the room until it became nothing more than a stain under the window. Then even that disappeared. By sunrise, Gabriel smelled like melted frost, candle wax, and bleach. The hallway lights worked again. Room 214 warmed slowly, 1 degree at a time, until the thermostat matched the rest of the building. The call lights stopped blinking. The chapel door stayed open, and for the first time in weeks, the air inside the east wing felt ordinary. Ordinary should not have felt like a miracle, but it did. The administrator thanked Father Miguel, thanked Denise, thanked Christina and Isabella, and then spoke in the careful voice of someone trying to turn terror into paperwork. He said there would be an inspection. He said maintenance would review the heating system. He said the center would remain calm for the residents. Christina listened without expression. When he finished, she took off her gloves, placed in the trash, and said, "We are not cleaning nights anymore." Isabella looked at her, surprised, then relieved. Christina continued, "Day shift, yes. Morning, afternoon, fine. But when the sun goes down, someone else can mop those halls." No one argued. For a while, the haunting seemed over. Room 214 was repainted. The cracked window was replaced. A small framed prayer was hung near the recliner, and Denise quietly added Gina Alvarez's name to the annual remembrance list read in the chapel every November. Isabella never found Sophia or any family member who would answer, but she visited the chapel one afternoon and lit a candle anyway. "I'm sorry they did not come," she whispered. "But somebody heard you." Nothing answered. That was the mercy of it. Months passed. Christina and Isabella moved to daytime cleaning. They arrived with the breakfast carts when nurses were changing shifts and sunlight made every bad memory feel a little less possible. They joked again. They complained about supply orders again. They swept, wiped, polished, and kept their eyes away from the corner room unless work required otherwise. But horror does not always end by leaving. Sometimes it ends by becoming quieter. One spring afternoon, Isabella was cleaning the family lounge when a little boy, maybe 6 years old, stood in the hallway holding a stuffed rabbit. His grandmother was a patient down the hall, and the boy had been wandering while his mother spoke with a nurse. He looked toward room 214 and waved. Isabella felt her stomach tighten. "Who are you waving at, baby?" The boy smiled. The lady, Christina, who had been wiping the coffee machine, went still. Isabella forced her voice to stay soft. "What lady?" "The one in the chair," he said. "She told me not to be scared of the dark man." The coffee machine beeped behind Christina, loud enough to make them both jump. Isabella turned slowly toward room 214. The door was open. Sunlight poured across the bed. The recliner sat empty in the corner. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the little wooden cross beside the door swung once, as if touched by a hand no one could see. Christina took the boy gently by the shoulders and guided him back toward his mother. She did not run. She did not scream. She had learned that in places like St. Gabriel's, fear had to be carried carefully because other people were already carrying enough. That evening, before they left, Isabella stood at the far end of the east hallway and looked one last time toward room 214. The room was warm. The light was steady. No crying came from the walls. But on the polished floor, reflected beneath the bed, she saw a shadow crouched where no shadow should be. It did not run. It waited. Christina found her there and took her hand. "Come on," she said gently. "Day shift is over." They walked out together before sunset, and from that day on, neither woman ever accepted graveyard work again. Because some rooms can be blessed, some spirits can be guided, and some sorrows can finally be heard. But the thing that feeds on waiting, the thing that hides where the dying are left alone, does not need darkness to survive. It only needs one person to promise tomorrow. Thank you for your support, and thank you for tuning into our stories. Some are fiction and some are based on a true event. We would really appreciate it if you could like this video, share, and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned for a new story every day.